Hello everyone, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis with another top 5 video. Today I'm going to be going over my top 5 favourite Space Marine characters. This is a follow-up kind of to my last top 5, which you can check out the link in the description below, where I talked about my favourite 40k characters. I said at the time I didn't want to give all the love to the Marines because there are so many of them. Like, I have an entire post-it note of just Space Marine characters. It's ridiculous. There must be 25, even more on this little list that I compiled just off memory. And yeah, just to make sure I didn't give all the love to Marines, I put them all under one banner so I could only pick one Astartes character. But today, I'm giving all the love to the Marines, and I'm going to go through my favourite Marine characters. Bear in mind, this is just my personal opinion. If you have your own list, make sure to let me know in the comments below. I'd be very interested to hear it, and leave suggestions for future top 5s. But enough about that. Let's get on with this top 5 with the number 5 spot. In at number 5, we have Kor'sarro Khan of the White Scars, Master of the Hunt. This guy is very interesting because he is tasked by the White Scars with hunting down an enemy of the chapter of the Imperium and killing them. He has one job at a time. He doesn't get redeployed across war zones. His company is left exclusively for the great hunts that they do, which is really awesome. It's something that's so unique to him and the White Scars. I think it's the 4th, or is it the 3rd company? I feel like it's the 3rd company, actually, now that I think about it. But he's very, very interesting in that way, and he's damn good at it. I mean, he's featured in 2 books, The Hunt for Voldorius and Damocles. I'm going to talk a bit more about Damocles in a minute. And he's just a consummate badass. But then again, all Marines are badass, so to be called a badass amongst a bunch of badasses, you've got to be pretty good. He's also a biker, which I think is quite cool. Space Marines on bikes is something interesting. His bike, Moondraken, is, well, I don't know how much different it is to a normal Space Marine bike, but it sounds really cool. The one thing I think he's missing is the lack of a bike model. I would love for an actual canonic model for Kor'sarro Khan on Moondraken, because he only has his foot-mounted model, and yes, I know you could probably mount that torso on a bike and make him into a bike-mounted character, but I'd like to have his own model so we can see a custom Moondraken and all that sort of thing. Now, in the Damocles book, he has an interesting relation with Commander Shadowsun, who he is tasked with killing. They are, I nearly say, 2 sides of the same coin, but that would mean they're polar opposites, but they're not. They're so similar, and Shadowsun knows this. They are the same side of 2 separate coins, the Imperial coin and the Tau coin, for want of a better phrase. And Shadowsun and Khan have some sort of I'm not going to say respect, because he still thinks she's a filthy Xenos, but it's very interesting to see this dynamic play out between the 2 of them. It's just something different that I've not seen before. So that's Kor'sarro Khan. He is number 5. Let's move on to the number 4 spot. Right, in at number 4, we have Ragnar Blackmane, who is a Wolf Lord of the Space Wolves. He is awesome. His backstory has been detailed in insane depth. He has an entire series of books dedicated to him with, I think, 2 omnibuses now. And yeah, if you want to read more about Ragnar's story, go and read those. If the first one is anything to go by, they will really be worth your time. He had this insane bravado. He was so cocky and confident. And to someone reading about all these reserved heroes, or maybe who were just really knew their limits and all that sort of thing, to read out this guy who just had who had no chill. He just had no chill. He would just go ham on anybody. He was still a Bloodclaw. He fought like a Bloodclaw, for crying out loud. He still ran around with a pistol and a, well, super chainsaw, a Frostblade. The one thing, again, like Khan, that I think he needs is a new model, because this one is ancient. It's still in the old single, like, pose metallic models back in the day, which kind of sucks. But if he had a new model with his 2 wolves in the kit, I think Ragnar would be amazing. I don't know if he'd go any higher on the list, because there are some more older models on the list, but we'll see. Also, in lore terms, it is theorized, at least, that he will be the next Great Wolf if the plotline were to advance and Logan were to go kaput. But that's never going to happen because of GW. So that's Ragnar Blackmane. He is number 3. That's the 2nd time I've done that. He is number 4. And now let's go on to number 3. Alright, number 3. Another Space Wolf, actually. Bjorn the Fell-Handed. What can I say about Bjorn the Fell-Handed? He is the oldest living Space Marine. He is the oldest, as far as I'm aware. He walked the battlefields of the Imperium alongside Leman Russ. He was in Russ's honor guard. I think the only other person I can think of who can test that title is Luther, of the Dark Angels, who was one of Lionel Johnson's old friends, and is still technically alive if you know the Dark Angels backstory well enough. But he's one of the oldest, if not the oldest. And he's the only named Dreadnought character in the game, as far as I know. There are no Wraith characters for Eldar, which sort of comes similarly close. There's no Riptide character if you don't count the Farsight Enclaves. There's certainly no Dreadnought characters in any other Space Marine Codex or Chaos Codex. So he has this unique place. And as a Dreadnought, he's more customizable than any other unique character I can think of. He can choose his loadout for his ranged weapon, which is really, really cool. He's so clever. His strategic skills are just next level. He pretty much single-handedly saved the Fang from an invasion by Magnus the Red in the Battle of the Fang Space Marine Battles book, which is pretty well detailed, because Magnus basically tricked the Space Wolves, sent most of them off on a great hunt, and then, well, just landed on Fenris. And Bjorn and one great company, plus some recruits, basically saved the Fang long enough for the other wolves to come back. It's just fantastic, and Bjorn was there to watch Magnus be vanquished again. Back to the warp, I believe, although he did nearly die as a result. And finally, this is a little lesser-known story. In the book The Emperor's Gift, he settles a debate between the Inquisition / Grey Knights and the Space Wolves. I say debate, I mean more like almost a feud between the two, after the Space Wolves chose to save the inhabitants of Armageddon after the First War, despite the fact that the Inquisition declared them all to be neutered and killed because they'd been on the same planet as Angron. Came to blows a couple of times. Logan Grimnar in his very early days was involved. He was still, I think, a Wolf Lord back in the day, and it was settled by Bjorn, who I think basically threatened the Inquisition off, but he was so clever about what he did, and he won a lot of respect from the Grey Knights for it, which is something that's really interesting. So that's Bjorn the Fell-Handed. He is number 3. Let's go on now to number 2. In at 2, Shadow Captain Shrike. Surprise, he's not number 1. Yes, I know. In the last top 5, I made him my honourable mention for the Space Marines. But I had to think about it, and I think there's someone who tops him, which we'll get onto soon. So, Shadow Captain Shrike. What can I say about him that I haven't said already? Well, not much. He has a jump back and lightning claws, which is an aesthetic I really, really like, probably due to Conrad Kurz. He has a different style of warfare. He's fought guerrilla warfare against the Alpha Legion. The Alpha Legion, who are the masters of subterfuge. And he can still do it. He's so skilled, and he's outwitted orcs. He was a terror to the orcs in one of his larger wars. He's something of a parody to Kor'sarro Khan, because he shows up in both Hunt for Voldorius and Damocles alongside Khan. In a very different capacity, and it's very interesting to see the two played off against each other. So that's really cool as well. Plus his model is pretty awesome. I think it could do with a revamp so it look a little bit better, but I like his pose at the moment. So that is Shadow Captain Shrike. I've kind of talked about him already. So I'm going to do the honorable mentions next, and then we'll reveal the number 1 spot. So as I say, before we reveal the number 1 spot, let's have a couple of honorable mentions. So we have Samael, the Dark Angels. He's the Dark Angel representative on this list, and he gets it simply because he rides a jet bike. He's the only person with a jet bike in the entire Space Marines army. Even though they were so common back in the Heresy, they don't use them anymore, which kind of sucks. So Samael gets a mention pretty much just for that, and for being the only Raven Wing who knows what's going on with the Fallen, and the skill it takes to be able to lead the Raven Wing to hunt the Fallen without knowing they're hunting the Fallen. I have to give him points for that. Also on the list, I have Lamartes, Guardian of the Lost from the Blood Angels. I was very tempted by both Mephiston and Astartes, and then by Captain Tycho. There are so many Blood Angels I could have put in this spot, but I've gone with Lamartes simply because he's got over the Black Rage. And that's really awesome. He got through the Black Rage, he overcame it, and now shepherds the Death Company in a way that no other Blood Angel can. Plus, when he gets shot, he used to get really, really mad, which was kind of cool. Not as good as he used to be, I think, because Assault generally got nerfed, but Lamartes is still cool. There was one person who was going to make this list, and then I did a bit more research and realised he's a douche, and that's Captain Lysander. He was probably going to take the number 5 spot from Khan, but then I realised he's a colossal dick. He abandoned a bunch of Raven Guard to die so as he could lead a better counterattack, which is really cruel because he didn't tell the Raven Guard he was doing it. He refused aid from both Sicarius and Tycho, leading to a massive massive disaster for the Imperial Fists. He learned his lesson and then used them the next time, but dear God, he was an arse. So he got taken off the list, and I also want to give a quick mention to Telian of the Ultramarines, because while I don't generally like the Ultramarines all that much, Telian is a little bit unique. He's a sniper character, which is obviously very unique, and he's chosen to remain with the Scout Company despite the fact he could probably be Chapter Master by now. So those are my honourable mentions. Let's go on now to the number 1 spot on my list. And in at number 1 on my top 5 favourite Space Marine characters, I have Chaplain Grimaldus. Chaplain Grimaldus is basically the Iron Hand Strachan of the Space Marines, crossed with Commissar Yarrick. Need I say more? He's incredibly resilient. He just will not give up. His iconic line, "I have made my grave in this place, and it is here that I will die," from Armageddon 3 in the Hell's Reach book, still resonates now. It's a fantastic little line, and the battle is so well told that it really makes Grimaldus seem like an absolutely epic character. And in the game, he also refuses to die. I don't think he's quite as good as Yarrick at getting back up again, but he is still cool, and I really appreciate Grimaldus for that. He's a massive badass because, well, he's a Space Marine, he's a chaplain, which is pretty cool. He doesn't die, don't say anymore. But there's another side to Grimaldus other than this one-dimensional badass. He has some form of humanity still within him, which is kind of weird for a Black Templar. He has this inner conflict. He didn't believe he was right to be chosen as Reclusiarch after his mentor died. He did not believe he was worthy when he went down to Armageddon, which for a chaplain who is supposed to be the most devout leader is very, very weird. And it's a very interesting tale to see a chaplain fighting his own inner demons whilst inspiring the men around him. And also, he, at least in the Hell's Reach book, returned the relics of the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant, or whatever it's actually called, to the inhabitants of Hive Hell's Reach. I know he has them in-game, carried by his servitors, but I know we'll take some of it as canon and some of it as just another thing. Maybe he just kept a few, left the rest, I don't know. But it's something that's very unique, that he was willing, as a Black Templar, who earlier on lambasted a Salamander's captain for not advancing and choosing to hold ground and protect civilians, to then show the Hivers, "You've earned my respect." That takes some doing with Space Marines, particularly ones as zealous as Black Templars. Even Yarrick had to earn Grimaldus' respect. And that's something that's really cool about Grimaldus, that just puts him a step above. Instead of just being a one-dimensional character with some clever interactions like Khan, or possibly even Ragnar, despite Bjorn being just this unbelievable genius and just a legend, despite the fact that I put Shrike in, I had another think Grimaldus just tops him in a few ways. I know in a straight fight, Shrike wins every time because Lightning Claws versus Crozius, but what can you do? So that is my top 5 favourite Space Marine characters. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you at least partially agree with my list. If you do, that's awesome. If you don't, please feel free to let me know why in the comments below, maybe give me your own list. Be nice to others if they have their lists as well, just general common sense really. And if you have suggestions for future top 5s, I would love to hear it in the comments below. So thank you very much for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again.